everyone. So this is a special event as part of our Developers in Training program from the Education Department here at the Lexington Public Library. This evening, we have four Googlers who have different roles in the tech space at Google, two of whom led an hour of breakbeat code with our middle school students last fall. We're pleased that you guys are here. Our next event occurs this coming Monday, June 5th, for an information session on how you can take an online self-paced IT-focused program at no cost. So we have flyers available here, but I will be at the Northside branch, and it's from 3:30 to 6:30, so these are, like I said, online self-paced programs in cybersecurity, data analytics, digital marketing, project management, IT support, and UX design. So more information will be available on that on Monday. So I hope to see all of you all here. So let's welcome Heather. She is the executive director here at the Lexington Public Library.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you guys all for being here tonight. First, I want to thank our Google developers. We really appreciate your time and your expertise in sharing that with us and our community. You know, I've always said that the library is a place for self-directed learning. You know, you go through school, you learn what they want you to learn, how they want you to learn it. But the library, you can come and it's for self-directed learning. You can learn whatever you want to learn, however you want to learn it. If you want to come to an in-person class, you can do that. If you want to do a self-paced online class, you can do that. And I think that's something that the library and Google really have in common, is the freedom and flexibility to use the tools available to you in the way that is important to you. So finally, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, everyone who is participating in our Google Android Developer Program, and also to Brian and Lori for helping to set this up. You know, they're doing amazing work through our education department and helping to really intentionally develop educational programs at the library. So I really thank and applaud them for their work here. So I hope you guys enjoy and have a really productive discussion.
All right, thank you, Heather. And I also want to give a shout out to our subject matter experts, John, Amber, and Joya, for helping us guide the program and it just being awesome and amazing. So let's get started. So if each of our guests could kind of introduce themselves and give us a few details about their current role, that would be awesome.
Cool. I guess since I'm in the room here, I'll get started. So, hey everyone, nice to meet you all. My name is Stefan Solandi. I work at Google. I've been there for about 4.5 years as a custom engineer, and I'll explain what the heck that does later. If you detect an accent, I'm originally from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. Never thought I'd find myself one day in Kentucky, but very happy to be here. And yeah, really looking forward to spending the rest of the evening with you all. I'll hand it over to Richard.
Hi, everyone. Richard Ashe. I've been in the tech industry since 1997 in different roles, mainly sort of business development related. Spent time in Ireland for a couple of years, Singapore for 12, all working in different tech companies. Prior to that, I was an English teacher, in high school English teacher. In 6 weeks in, I had a student tell me that I didn't look like a teacher. I should be in business. I was a 13-year-old student giving me my career advice, which I followed, but I always had a passion for teaching. So Google has this thing called 20% time, where we're able to give back to the community in different ways. And I created what is now called Breakbeat Code, where we teach coding through beat making, music production, focus on primarily high school students, but also adult learners. And that was me in a little classroom at Google. And then thanks to Calvin, Stefan, Estelle, and other volunteers, we were able to bring this all over the world. So yeah, looking forward to our conversation.
Estelle, I'll let you go.
Hello, everyone. I am Estelle. I am currently an early careers recruiter here at Google. So I essentially assist candidates early within their career. That's from college all the way to having 2 to 3 years of experience as a software engineer. I assist them in the interview process as well as onboarding into Google. So that's why I'm an early careers recruiter. Um, I absolutely love what I do, and hopefully, we can give you all some tips and answer all of your questions today.
Yep. So hi everyone. Yep. Calvin, Penny. I come from a military background. Where I got into tech is I worked at a company named Oracle, and I started out covering the Department of Defense account. So my role currently right now is at Google's in sales. So I work with healthcare and life sciences companies. What I do is I try to find a business need or a business challenge, and I work with folks like Stefan, who'd be a customer engineer, and Stefan puts together the technical solution, and we work together to help serve customers' needs. How I got involved into Breakbeat Code. So Breakbeat Code, I don't know if you know, but it's a 20% project at Google. I've always been excited to learn coding. And, I thought Breakbeat Code was a fun way to learn how to code with music because I'm so passionate, super passionate about music. So, but, through that program, we were able to connect with people around different communities around the world, and excited to tell you more of, give you more of my story and answer any questions that you have.
Great. I know Calvin and Richard, but both of you mentioned Breakbeat Code. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I think some of the people here probably aren't aware of that program.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick description of it. Basically, we created Breakbeat Code to teach coding in a way that was more engaging and what we call culturally responsive, right? Often, if you are a student taking a traditional curriculum, you're going to fall into one of two buckets. Either A, you really like the way traditional curriculum for coding's taught, and you like to solve puzzles, and then next thing you know, coding's for you, and you just get really into it. For a lot of students that have all this potential to code, that curriculum doesn't really work for them, mainly because they look at those kind of toy projects that you do when you first learn to code as not being relevant or interesting. They want to create a game. They want to create music. They want to create something interesting. And so Breakbeat Code is helping students find ways to get into coding faster, to identify with being coders. And we do that by teaching them how to write code to remix music tracks, right? So if you're familiar with how music production software is used, you're typically dragging and dropping. It's like a normal GUI. All this is students writing some Python code to do the same actions. So writing code that executes and then places different sounds in different tracks and remixes music. And so we use a platform called EarSketch from Georgia Tech. And and it's been a really, really fun way to get students who probably didn't think of themselves as being coders to, within about 20, 30 minutes, writing their first code to remix their first music track. And like I said, we've been teaching this to primarily high school students. We've also been teaching it to adult learners. Normally, when we teach adult learner, we try to encourage them to think of themselves as being a coach. So they start to think of, okay, the way I'm going to use this first is to try to explain this to a student. And then I find that I learn really well personally when I have an intention to teach it. So I learn, and because I know if I get in front of a class, they're going to ask me tough questions. So I'm going to learn a lot more about that area. So I kind of prep myself, and that helps me get deeper into a topic. But yeah, it's called Breakbeat Code, and you can check it out. You'll have the link.
Yeah, and that's a program that we offered at the library. It's one that we'll hopefully be working and offering again in the future. So thank you for that, Richard.
Yeah.
This is a question kind of for all of you all. Could you talk a little bit about your role at Google? Maybe kind of how you were brought on and obtained your position, and what's a typical day that you all might have?
I guess I'll go first on this one. So what's the question again? It's how do I get my role and what I do, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
what you
perfect.
do and what's a typical day?
Okay, no problem. So how did I get to Google? So basically, I went to college in New York, and after I graduated, I didn't really know what to do with myself really. So just threw a bunch of resumes out there. I just happened to put on the resume that I was from Trinidad and Tobago as a swimmer, and the guy who was interviewing me for a job said, "Oh, my mom's actually from Trinidad and Tobago," and you kind of bonded on that, and that's kind of how I got my first into the whole world of what we call pre-sales, which is a technical person like myself talking to customers to understand what are their challenges and trying to figure out how to use technology to solve those challenges. Fast forward 10 years later, I get a call from a recruiter from Google. It says like, "Hey, do you want to come work for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" At the time, I didn't think I was smart enough to work at Google. I told myself that. But thankfully, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she's like, "No, you're going to interview. You're going to push." I was like, "No, I don't want, no, you're going to go, all right?" So she pushed me, and because she supported me, I felt empowered to actually apply and do my best. And I landed the job at Google. And in terms of what my day-to-day is, I typically cover financial services within New York, whether it's hedge funds or your traditional banks. My days, usually I roll out of bed at like around 6 or so. I check my phone. I have customers in India and Switzerland pinging me. I'm like, okay, let me answer them. I check in with my team. I figure out like what our tasks are for the day. We knock them out, set up meetings, do architecture sessions with my customers. So I wear a lot of hats throughout the day and throughout the week. And because of that flexibility, that's why I like the job, right? This specific role also allows me to be very flexible with my time. If I know things are set up and going well, I can cut out early on a Friday and take my dog to the park or something, right? And it also lets me take care of myself. So I work a lot from home. I will also say like one of my daily routines is I literally take my dog and we go walk around in Central Park for an hour. And that really helps me de-stress. That helps me think about things. It's kind of hard for me to be like mad or stressed if I'm walking around, the nice trees around. I'm like, oh, this is nice. I tell my dog, hey, stop rolling in the grass, please. So different kind of problems. But that's a typical day for me, and I like the role because of the flexibility, the different challenges. There are a lot of frustrations too, like everything, right? But I'm definitely like empowered to try and solve that out. And I definitely have like supportive environments. I have a supportive team and supportive manager as well. Okay, cool. I'll throw the question back to the group.
I can go next.
Okay. Now I was saying like Stefan, your day sounds way better than mine. I need to get some advice.
I know, right? Stefan sounds like he has a very calm day. In terms of how I personally got into Google, so I actually worked in recruiting previously. I worked for a recruiting agency for a couple of years, and then I felt as if I had hit a ceiling. I didn't want to move on into sales. And I was just looking for great companies out there. So I started applying. I got some offers and I also got some rejections. So those of you who are applying right now, keep on applying. And one of my friends told me, hey, you should try Google. Google was actually in the same building as the old company I worked for. I said, okay, why not? I gave it a try. Our interview process is very detailed. So with that being said, I received some offers within that time. I thought Google had forgotten about me until I would say it was like 2 weeks. I got a call from my recruiter saying, hey, we hadn't forgotten about you. Just hang tight. And eventually signed an offer. After that process, came on board. I have been with Google for about two plus years now. So came on board. So it's essentially somebody telling me, hey, you should apply to Google. Wasn't a little girl dreaming of working at Google, but I'm super excited and fortunate to work for such an incredible company to where I get to work on great projects like Great Big Code, even though that's not my daily project that I work on. In terms of my typical day, I would love to say that my typical day is going to the gym every morning. I try, it does not happen. This morning I did not want to go, but I still made it to the gym. I try to go to the gym on most days. I get in the office, check emails, have follow-up with my candidates, check in on them, see if they need anything from me, if I have any action items, check in with hiring managers as well. Then I go into my meetings. I have meetings, I would say a lot of meetings every day. Stefan didn't mention that he has a ton. I have a ton of meetings every day. So I try to, in between my meetings, go for walks around the building, get some walking in, and then I go to lunch. After lunch, then I have more meetings. It's 5 o'clock here, and well, a little after 5, and I'm still here online with you all. So I have a ton of meetings throughout the day, meetings on different things. I work on a lot of different projects, as well as what we call ERGs, that's Employee Resource Groups. I have a few ERGs I'm a part of, so I have meetings for those as well. Before the day ends, I like to check in with my candidates. I also check in with my lead to ensure that all my action items are taken care of for the day. And then by the time I leave the office, it's not a lot of traffic. So then I was on home, and yeah, that's pretty much my day.
Thank you for that. Calvin?
Yeah, so the way I got into Google, this is interesting because, like, I mean, you heard from Estelle. Estelle and I, we're from the same island. We're from the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. And, growing up, I never even once thought that I would be at a company like this. So every time I, when I go into a Google office, I just pinch myself because it seems unreal, you know? The way I was able to get into Google, interestingly, because I was at Oracle, which Oracle is another, like, well-known company. And I use this tool. I don't know if anyone's using it, but after today, hopefully you will use it more. Is LinkedIn. So I started posting on LinkedIn, and I started as I was putting content out there, I got my name out there, and then I had a recruiter reach out to me from Google, recruited me from LinkedIn, and it was I can remember it was during Christmas, and when the recruiter reached out to me, at first I was like, well, of course, like Google reached out to me, let me see how I could take this on to the next step. And I'm telling you, like anybody you talk to that works at Google, it's a long process. So it was, after the initial interview, it took a while for them to get back to me. They finally got back to me, and just going through the interview process, it was probably one of the most interesting interview processes that I've been through at a company. I had to put in literally 2 weeks of preparation for this, and at the end, even during the interview, they had to bring me back in because like typical interviews that I've been in the past, you'd have a conversational back and forth with someone, but with our interviews, it's more when you're interviewing with someone, they're taking notes so they could go back and review those notes with the team to make a decision on whether they would move forward with you, right? So it was a complete new experience to me. Even though it was nerve-wracking, what I did is I talked to I used LinkedIn to talk to some people that have already went through the process, so I would at least know what I was getting myself into, right? And coming into Google, I was it was a dream come true, right? So right now, currently, I'm what you call a FSR, which is a field sales rep. And one of my main responsibilities is to meet with healthcare customers in the healthcare and life sciences, industry, and learn about their needs. So one of the things that one of the programs, Google is very popular for AIML, right? Because that's one of the huge focus areas for us. We have this one tool that came, this one tool, MedPalm, right? If you get a chance, look it up. So MedPalm, what it does is it's similar to like a ChatGPT type tool, but it's an LLM for practitioners in the medical field. So you figure now you have, typically you would have like highly trained medical professionals to work with people in the healthcare industry. Now, kind of like you use ChatGPT today to like create emails to give you answers to stuff. Now, Google has a tool, MedPalm, that could help, practitioners and people in the medical field get to quicker diagnosis and to help save money, save time, so we could, better serve patients, right? So I got really excited because, when you look at the trends, the macro trends, especially in the world, not only North America, there's a whole ton of baby boomers and people getting older. So, and then one thing you saw with the pandemic, with COVID, is that obviously, there's a huge need to modernize our healthcare system. So I decided to get into a field at Google. So we could help solve that problem. So super excited about that. Typical day for me is, one thing that's a must for me is to go to the gym. After the gym, meditate, then journal. And then after that, I try to read to know what's going on in the industry. So I read, CIO magazine, Financial Times, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Just skim it through, right? I'm not trying to read the whole thing. And then after that, based off of the talking points I could get from there, I could have something that's kind of add some value to customers that I talk to every day. So the type of people that I would talk to are CTOs. So a CTO is a chief technology officer. A CIO is a chief information officer, and other business leaders throughout these companies, because they're looking to us, Google, to help them solve their needs, right? So I find it, very important to just be in the know of what's going on in the industry, get prepared, and yeah, I work remote, similar to like what Estelle says. And depending on if I work remote, if I go into the office, my day would look completely different. Sometimes I would work out during lunch so I could break up the day. But yeah, that's my day. That's how I got into Google.
If I could just add to that, Cavill.
What's that, Steph?
No, sorry, Calvin, just adding to what you were saying there in terms of the dynamics. Like, think of this trick. Calvin's like, the sales guy, I'm like the tech guy.
And we partner together to go and help meet with customers and solve their problems. So kind of tag team there. So yeah. Richard?
As the brains, I show up for the looks, right? So that's kind of how we partner together.
Richard?
So I'm going to tell you how my day was until we had this conversation, because going forward, I'm going to wake up, meditate, journal. I'm signing up right now for CIO magazine. I'm going to go do them literally every day. And this is kind of humbling. You all have very good discipline. So how I got to Google, I got rejected from a job that I interviewed for back in Singapore. Just didn't even get past the first round. And the guy that I met, his name's Doug Farber, never spoke to him again until I got a call from Google. And he had actually remembered me. And I think what I learned later is like, I think this is the right guy. This is just not the right role. So I made some sort of impression, but he's just like, there's some stuff here that I think could work. And he kind of kept me in mind. So kind of one lesson is, like all the time you're interviewing with companies, each at bat that you have, it's valuable. Like even if you don't get the role, because you're going to learn the skills of telling your story, of like having a conversation with someone, being sort of authentic, but at the same time, like, having a strong sense of how you're going to position yourself and describe how you'd be valuable. And so, eventually had the privilege of joining the company after like, back then we did not have Estelle. We had a very unstructured interview process. I had like 8 interviews. 5 of them didn't actually have any proper interview questions. It was hilarious. And we were answering like those ridiculous questions around like what happens if you're like, how many planes land in Heathrow Airport every day. We don't do that way. We have a much more structured process now. So that's like how I got into Google. How I structure my day. So the way I think of things, I'm at this point in my life, I got a pretty good sense of where I want to go. And the way I think of it, 5 to 6 years from now, I want to be a CEO of a small company. Call it Series B, Series C, with like, call it 1 to 200 employees. Working backwards, I wanted to be a board advisor. And I'm already doing that today. And I want to do more of that. And by that, and be a paid board member as well. So that means I get to work with startups and founders. And a lot of those people I work with, they lack some sort of capability that I happen to have the experience in. So it's like I'm talking to an engineer or a CTO, but they don't have a strategy background. They haven't had the opportunity to bring a product to market. And so I'm helping fill those gaps and helping them think through how they recruit people and their larger opportunity in the market and how they pitch themselves. So that's going to be a bigger part of my life. I'm already doing that now. And then I also want to turn Breakbeat Code into a nonprofit, because right now it's a 20% time project at Google. And so based on that, what I want to do with all those different things, and between now and then, I want to run a bigger team. And so based on that, that's how I kind of structure my day. And so in the sense that I want to make sure, we actually have this feature in Google Calendar where you can kind of color code your meetings. And I get to actually see how much time I spend on each thing. So I spend a certain amount of time mentoring people because I want to give back, and I love doing that and love coaching people. It's also a great way to think about how you build teams. Everyone I mentor, I consider themselves to be someone I might hire later. So actually kind of effectively talent scouting in the same way, doing some talent scouting. I love doing that. It's a huge part of what I love to do. There's a certain point in time where I want to spend talking to more senior people than me. So I have a certain level of executive engagement I want to spend. So I'll spend a good chunk of my time doing that. And then there's just, I also differentiate between the time I spend in workshops versus like internal things. And like, I got like just counted 13 meetings today. And fortunately, only one of those was a quote unquote sync. By a sync means get on the call and you're just getting each other updates, which personally, I think that should be an email. Where I have a lot of fun is when I'm actually creating something at the end of it. Like we're putting in something in a strategy, we're agreeing to like a solution design, like we're doing a thing, not just talking about maybe someday doing a thing. And that's how I kind of think about my day. And there's another chunk of it is just around networking. So I spend a chunk of my time just like, connecting with people out and getting a little bit outside my comfort zone and meeting people that maybe I wouldn't proactively meet normally. And that could be anyone. That could be people who are CEOs. It could be engineers I normally wouldn't have the chance to talk to. And that is, you never know how that's going to pay off. It may not pay off directly from anything, but you'll eventually find that, you connect with someone that knows a person that eventually connects with you, and eventually it turns into an interesting opportunity.
Well, awesome. Thank you. I loved hearing like all four of the different perspectives and like how each of your own stories and your own passions and interests, really kind of help shape, kind of where you are and kind of where you see yourself going. So terrific. Let's see. I realize that not all of you guys do programming on a regular basis, but for those that do, could you tell us what programming languages that you use, and what advice you would have for aspiring developers to increase their knowledge base?
Any of you guys go?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in just because I think focus mainly on teaching coding. And like I said, primarily to high school students. I don't need it for my day job. And what I teach students is that the way people code today is absolutely not at all the way it's going to be in 2 years. So if you think of like mainframes with punch cards, the way people code today is equivalent to a mainframe with a punch card. Like it'll be almost laughable. We'll look back 2 or 3 years from now, like, did we actually like sit there in front of a screen and like write thousands of lines of code and like just stare at it and like try to debug it? Like it'll actually like go in a few years, that'll sound like ridiculous that we ever did that. And why? Because there already is Gen AI, where this is already happening now at Google. Like we're actually seeing that more and more of our code is automatically generated. Now they're trying to figure out like, what do you do with that? Like, what do you do with that extra time the engineer has? And how do you because it's making them more productive. So I teach Python at Google. You'll see Python, Go, Java, JavaScript will be some of the more popular languages that they use internally. But more and more of this is just going to be having a strong understanding of how software is designed, having the ability to think through a problem the way you would when you code. And the way you study coding will give you a much better feel of how you would basically prompt engineer something like ChatGPT, or at Google, it's Bard and Vertex, these other solutions we have. And you'll have a much better way to structure your instructions. And it's kind of similar to if you're not coding every day, let's say you're a product manager, so you're not actually writing code most of the time. You're actually talking to someone who's actually going to write the code. They need to structure they need to have a conversation really with the engineer and describe what they're doing and describe what they want. That's got to be back and forth, and there's going to be trial and error, and they're going to have to test this stuff out. And instead of that, I think what's going to happen going forward is you're going to have like the engineer's the one having that conversation around like, this is what I want. This is how I want you to do it. I need a function that does this. I need a site that does that. I need you to create a database for these purposes. And it's just falling through, but then it's going to come back with like something that's not going to work. And then you got to keep iterating. That's already happening today. I think the way it's going to happen going forward is that it'll just fundamentally change the way we code. And I don't think we'll need to. And what today, if you look at a Googler, like we pass by the office, you like look at the people I work with, they stare at a screen for like hours trying to find the bug. And that just won't be a thing anymore. Like the role of a software engineer will be much more similar to a designer of software, if that makes sense, where they're not actually typing.
That makes total sense. Kind of what you were talking about, the communication, could Stefan and Calvin, since one of you are in sales and one of you are in tech, could you talk about like a typical conversation that you two would have on a project to where you're, trying to talk the same language to get to the same result?
Yeah, sure. Let me stand up. Yeah, sure, Calvin. I'm sure you work with like other custom engineers like myself in the role. So from my perspective, it's typically let's say we go tag team and go talk to new clients, right? So Calvin will probably be thinking about from a business perspective, looking into some of their sales, see what the CEO is seeing, going on online public forums and figuring out like what are their objectives for the next year and things like that, right? On my side, I'll be trying to figure out, okay, what kind of technology stack do they use? What has their CTO been saying, right? We do a little bit of preliminary research, so to speak, right? And then we have like the first meeting with the customer, and Calvin and I were both listening for different things, and we're both taking different notes. And then after, we both ask our follow-up questions. After that meeting, we just compare notes and figure out, okay, how should we play this? What do we think? What do we think the next step would be, right? So that's been my experience as well, Calvin. Maybe you can add from your perspective.
So, my role. So some of the problems that customers that I find customers are trying to solve, right, is around creating a longitudinal patient record, right? So what that is so you can give, for example, most of us probably go to a primary care. If you go to a primary care hospital, if you go to your primary care, if you were to switch to a different hospital, for me, for my example, right? So I served in the military, so I have medical records with, I have medical records with the military, with the VA, right? But if I go to say another hospital or whatever, those hospital systems, as far as exchanging that patient record, they're on so many different systems, so it's tough for them to talk. And one of the things that Google Cloud, what we help solve for, is data, right? So helping customers, helping normalize that data. And then the thing is with healthcare is, you have to healthcare is such a highly regulated industry, so you have to de-identify that data. And when you look at different industries, retail has definitely modernized quite a bit when it comes to digital transformation. Same thing with finance, in the financial industry, right? Because in the financial industry, I could use my debit card in any ATM. I might have to have like a service fee, but you could, banks could communicate and change and share, move money around to different banks. But the challenge with healthcare is that everything's so siloed and there's so many different systems that my customers, they're looking for a way how they could create a better view of their patient history, so they're not wasting resources. For example, like if you had an operation at this hospital or you got this treatment at this hospital, I'm gonna make sure that, hey, I'm not giving you something that you already had, or I'm not over prescribing something. So yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, seeing how they could create that longitudinal record so they could reduce costs, how they could save more lives, and then how they could make the system way more efficient, right? So those are the type of problems that I'm sitting down with, these decision makers to help solve. And then the next thing too, like what's interested with Gen AI and the supply chain, it's kind of like figuring out, okay, how can I optimize my supply chain, right? I work with a pharmaceutical distributor, and it's like, okay, how can I use AI to predict buying patterns so I could know that I have a certain amount of mask. Like, you figure in the pandemic, people are running out of masks, right? So one of the biggest suppliers that I work with in New York, he's like, okay, well, I need to make sure I have enough on hand, because if they end up buying more, then that's more money that's more masks that they have in the inventory, and if the inventory doesn't sell, then they get hit with costs, right? So it's kind of like figuring out, okay, well, how can we make sure that you have enough inventory to provide patients? And yeah, it's some fun, tough problems to solve. I'm constantly getting new ones, but yeah, that's pretty much the type of problems I help solve. And you still need that what we learned in Great Big Code, that problem solving mentality, right? Because it's like, even though it's a business problem, it may not look like a coding problem. It's a problem in itself. So it's like working with multiple teams, being able, because the big thing with Great Big Code is problem solving, creativity, and collaboration. So one thing at Google that we tout is, it's not only, I'm not the only one going in there trying to solve that problem. It's Stefan and I, we're jointly working to solve this problem for the customer. And yeah, that's what we do.
Can I just add real quickly to what Calvin and Richard was saying, right? Quick show of hands, who here is like familiar with the term generative AI? I know we've been saying a lot, Gen AI, roughly speaking. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, go home and learn more about it, right? So Brandon's question was around like, what can folks do to, continue expand their knowledge? Just be curious, right? We didn't know what Gen AI was. I didn't know what Gen AI was 3 months ago, but now I'm like a specialist giving talks and educating people about this, right? Because I have to like throw myself into it, right? There's YouTube, there's Instagram, there's TikTok. There's no shortage of like resources to go out there and learn about this thing. I would say stay close to Gen AI and see where that goes, right? And in terms of like the programming stuff, like I learned Java in college, forgot all that stuff. I barely have my Python basics down, right? But whenever my customer has a problem, okay, I go on Stack Overflow to find the answer. Okay, I try things out myself. Okay, I talk to other folks. And I told myself, okay, one day I'm gonna go back and really learn Python for real. But now that Gen AI has come out, I'm like, I don't need to learn Python. I'm just gonna ask this thing what the thing is, right? But I need to know what the basics are, so I know, like, even though Gen AI is a tool to help me, I still need to know the basics on how to use that tool to make myself more productive, right? So stay curious, learn more about this Gen AI stuff. A lot of money to be made out there, you just gotta figure out how, be creative, right? And think of it as a tool that helps you figure out what you want to do, so to speak, right? So that'd be like my best piece of advice, I would say.
Yeah, that's good advice.
One thing I'd add to that, to what Stefan was saying, if you want to learn about Gen AI, think of something you'd actually want to use. Yeah. So think of like a project not like a toy project, or I'll just make this thing and just for the sake of making something. Like think of something you'd actually want to use, because and like I said, I don't need coding for my day job. I need to speak to engineers, but I studied Chinese when I lived overseas. It's gotten super rusty. Well, one thing I want to combine learning Chinese with breakbeats, with beats. And so like, well, what if I could get like a Chinese word, like phrases mapped to my keyboard so that I could like hit a button, I could start like using it as like a sampler. I got a beat going and then I'm like playing around, like, with the different tones. Because that's actually how I originally learned. I played around with it was a CD-ROM like a million years ago. And so because I had this idea, like I actually would use that thing. And then I like used generative AI to write the first bit of code. And of course, it's always going to be wrong, but then you debug it. And the more and more people I talk to are actually already doing this, and they're not necessarily programmers. They just know how to frame their question. And then they know enough about code where they can start to correct it. So I strongly recommend think of something cool that you would like to build for yourself, and then go out there and use one of the tools out there to just start to talk through it. And then when you hit an error, just look up that error. Like you can go to Stack Overflow, which is a great resource just to answer your questions. And in that process, you'll create something cool. You also learn a lot about coding, and you might even find something that turns into an idea that you could create a company around.
That's understanding. Yeah, if I could just piggyback off Richard's comment there, in terms of like finding a project that you like. I mean, that's, real world example here, 2021,
I'm still staying in my apartments, started cooking a lot. Like, man, I wish there was a good way for me to keep a website of all my favorite recipes. Okay, how do I build a website? Okay, I just spin up a virtual machine on Google Cloud. Okay, how do I secure that? Okay, how do I do networking on that? Okay, how do I, do all these other things on it, right? So just the simple problem of I want to have a website with all my favorite recipes, especially ones from back home. And what's the best way to like build around that? And doing that, you learn. But you're doing it because you have something that you like, right? And I have not touched it in a couple of years, but I'm glad I did it because I did learn a bunch of things. So definitely try and at least find that project and just have fun with it, I would say. So.
Yeah, the project-driven learning is what we do at the library, and it's just a terrific way to learn. So no matter what you're going into, I think that's great advice. In addition to collaboration and problem solving, I think those are like really key takeaways. For you all to leave
tonight. Yes.
I had a question for the audience. Show of hands, how many of you have been thinking about starting a company? Don't be shy. It's all good.
Yeah.
I can see a couple partially hands.
Yeah.
Everyone in the room can, if you want to. Like everyone in the room can start a company, if that is something that might excite you. And I strongly recommend trying. Because you'll learn so much in the process. And then I would also recommend getting into the startup community, because I think more and more we are all going to find ourselves basically being CEOs of our own company, one way or the other, because I think job market's going to be like transformed in big ways. So I'd strongly recommend, like, as you learn coding and learn these different skills, think of it first as like building a company. You can always get a job. But in the process, you'll learn a ton if you start thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's great. The getting the process going and asking questions, and kind of pursuing your interests, I think are great advice on that.
I just remember, like, even if it's scary to try and start your own company, remember something. Companies fail all the time. That's okay. Think of all these like great inventors or extremely successful people. Think about all the failures that they have, and think of all the things they learn from it. You don't remember the failures, you remember the successes, right? So fail, try again, make it big, fail, try again, make it big again. So yeah, don't be afraid of that, honestly. I'm afraid of it, but I'm telling you, don't be afraid of it. So.
Yeah, let me add to that, right? Kind of what's being said with Richard, starting your own company, is like, I feel like right now we're in this world where you can't just look for a role and just figure like that's gonna be my role. Like, we're in a type of world right now where you're gonna be able to create your own role. So even if the company you at today, you could just find a problem to solve, and maybe you could use Bard. I feel like I'm giving ChatGPT way too much plug, so I'm gonna say Bard, right? Maybe you could use Bard or something, right? You find a problem and you tell your manager or tell somebody like, hey, I see this is a problem, we should create this role. Then that's the type of world that we're living in today with Gen AI. Especially like a company like Google. We have what's called 20% projects, where pretty much I could go to Richard and be like, hey, Richard, I see this problem. Okay, well, before we make this an actual role, it's going to be a 20% project, Calvin. And go ahead, identify a need, see if we can solve it. Based off of that, we'll create a role for you, right? So I think that's the whole creativity. That's the big thing about Breakbeat Code. We try to get students to start thinking like outside the box, be creative. Don't wait for something don't just look for like, okay, well, this is it. This is how it's going to be. It's kind of like just use the imagination, right? And try and make something that you could get excited about.
Find a problem, create a role, solve it, charge how much you want for it. Yeah. Basically, create your salary.
How about we bring Estelle back? These are questions for you. How can someone get a job or an internship with Google, and what roles are available at an entry level?
I will take that question. In terms of what roles are available, there are, I would say, a plethora of roles available online on our career site. So, one trick I would say is to set up alerts at our career site. So that way you don't have to sit in front of a computer and wait for a job to be posted. Once you set up alerts and you have your alert set up to say, hey, like if a software engineering role comes about, let me know. If a sales roles come about, let me know. Once you set up those alerts, you will be notified as soon as those roles are posted. So that's one tip I find a lot of candidates that I speak with don't regularly do. And I encourage everyone I speak with to please set up alerts on our career site. There are a ton of roles for entry level, whether you look on the IT side. So for me, I recruit specifically software engineers. I know how to code a little bit of Python, but that's about it, right? So I'm not a coder by any means. However, I recruit software engineers, but I'm a recruiter. So my main goal is to assist software engineers in making the Google recruiting process as easy and as simple as possible for them. So I assist them in getting ready for the interviews, having conversation with hiring managers. I do all of that, but I'm not, I would say, heavy in terms of like coding and solving all the back end stuff, right? So I'm more or less on the front end. And there are a lot of roles available that are on the front end from time to time, but you have to take a look at our careers page. In terms of what, how to better prepare, I would say, for a role at Google. And when it comes down to it, I always tell candidates you want to keep an open mind and you want to be yourself. When I say keep an open mind, what I mean by that is be able to have a conversation and be yourself and let us know exactly what you are looking for. There have been times candidates interview and the role that they're interviewing for is just not a perfect fit for them. I believe it was Richard who spoke about it, where he interviewed for a role and it wasn't the right time, or maybe the right role. But then later on, when that perfect role came about, he was reached out to again. So always have an open mind and being, I would say, flexible. In this day and age, we have to be flexible, and just always keep your options open. And you may interview for a role, it might not be for you, but then recruiter might recommend maybe another role, right? Or another quick tip I would like to give is to always look at the job description and see, because let's say, for example, if you are looking for a software engineering role, however, you may not 100% line up to that role. Even if you do, you just, whatever, for whatever reason, didn't get into that position, you may very well fit into another position, or there may be some sort of skill that you have that you can bring to the table, and you might be a technical project manager or program manager. So always keep your options open, but first and foremost, you want to be yourself. Here at Google, I work with a lot of people who are very, very different, right? We come together to make the world a better place, but at the same time, we are very different. We come from all walks of life. And I love the fact that when I walk through the hallways of Google, everyone gets to be themselves. I show up to work authentically me, and I don't have to put on a persona just to be accepted. So first things first, you definitely want to be yourself and just be kind. Be kind to everyone. I think that's what makes our space, our working space, very comfortable. And I love to come to work because everyone is kind to me and I'm kind to everyone. So the people, I'm more or less, I will speak on the people skills because I'm more or less on that end. If you're having an issue or you're trying to solve some sort of problem or challenge and you don't know how to do it, you're kind to everyone around you. Everyone wants to help. The other day I was having an issue in terms of one of our backend systems. And I was like, I'm not sure what's going on here. And one of my teammates just slide on over in their turn. It was like, hey, let's take a look at it together. We put in a ticket within less than, I want to say, 10 minutes. We got a response and then we're able to move forward. So what I will end with is just to be kind. Not only be kind to your coworkers, be kind to everyone.
That's terrific.
I was going to just take a quick 30 seconds to show you exactly what Estelle was talking about. If you go to careers.google.com, you're probably going to, unless you're planning to move, you just put in remote eligible, you know, and then you can search on roles like software engineer. Then you can see all the roles out there that are remote eligible in software engineering. You'll notice actually a lot of stuff that comes up that's not software engineering. Actually, I think I didn't do my career right. Yeah. So I go in there and then I just turn on the alert. Yep. And then just automatically I sign in with my credentials, and then I'll automatically get that in my inbox. If you don't know what you want to do, I'd strongly recommend just starting to read job descriptions, right? And then you'll start to get a feel of like what Google calls different roles. And in part of that process, you might just start to say like, actually, I am a software engineer. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm more like I want to be technical, but I want to write code. So you'll start to say like, well, actually, I have this thing called technical program manager. What's that? You'll start to explore like these different job descriptions to get yourself a better idea. And so then we start applying. You might start applying to kind of different things and kind of figuring out what you want.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you, Richard and Estelle. I'm going to open it up to questions to the audience. So if you have a question, just raise your hand.
So Richard and Estelle, I saw with those postings that they list kind of bachelor's degree or practical experience. Is that fairly common with Google, that experience could equate to a degree?
I will take that mainly because I worked with candidates all day long. Yes. So I've worked with a few candidates that went to a boot camp and didn't have a degree. I've also worked with candidates who didn't go to a boot camp and didn't have a degree. They just essentially had experience. One of my, I would say, proudest days was actually being able to onboard and speak to a candidate that I was working with, which is now a Googler. He was actually an opera singer. And he's just always been fascinated with technology, and he's always worked on it, built his own at-home lab, and eventually decided he wanted to work in IT. He still did opera singing and worked for a smaller shop and he was looking for something different, right? And decided to apply. And little did he know, ended up having conversations with me, and now he's a Googler. So we work with candidates from all various backgrounds. So to answer your question, you can go ahead and have a lot of experience, even a little bit of experience. If you have strong skill set, you can have that skill set and it can carry you through versus having a degree. Of course, if you have a degree, you still have to have the skill set as well.
And then one thing I want to add to, like, I think I mentioned it earlier, like LinkedIn is such a bomb tool. I mean, if you use LinkedIn, you can find out, because I don't know what the statistic is, but I want to say it's about 90% of people that get hired at Google is through referrals, or like someone knows someone that knows someone that got them hired. So if through LinkedIn is interesting, because if you look at, you may be connected to somebody that's connected to Google that you could connect with to learn more about any openings or the roles that's available. So I would definitely, as you look on the website, that's great, look at roles, but networking is key, right? So if you want to, definitely increase your chances, I would definitely tap into that network, to your immediate network.
Yeah, always good to make that personal connection to where you can get more details and ask questions. Right?
And the one thing I would say, to be just so aware, like, you miss every shot you don't take with these things. So don't count yourself out. If you look at a role and it sounds interesting, but you're like, I don't have this, I don't have this, just it costs you nothing to apply, right? It costs you a little bit of time, and you might do a ton of these, and it's kind of a numbers game. Like if you're going to send out a single resume and apply once, good chance you're not going to get the job. Do it 20, 30, 50 times. Yeah, like you got to try it. So at the worst case scenario, you have a conversation, and in that process, when you prep, you actually learn a bit more about yourself. And one time I did that, and someone told me like, "You're not a fit. Like this doesn't." And I'm like, "You're right. I'm talking to you. I clearly don't want to do this job." Is in so many words. And so I think just just keep shooting your shots, and don't count yourself out just because you don't have more than 3 out of the 10 things they want.
Yeah,
And
and
really quickly,
fear, right? I heard several of you talk about like, that you didn't get the job right away, but those doors open for you later.
I would like to point out real quick, my job as a recruiter is to not only make the process a lot smoother for you going through our recruiting process, um, I am there to also help you prepare for your interviews. So my job is to essentially hop on calls with you just like this. I know meeting you all virtually. Hop on calls virtually with you and really give you some insight of what our process looks like, and really help you through, I would like to call them the little critters, the nerves that you'll have the day of. They will come, but being fully prepared beforehand, it helps to ease the nerves the day of the interview. So you will have preparation when interviewing with us. So to Richard's point, do not count yourself out. Please, please, please interview. Calvin mentioned it, as well. I did not dream of working here. I am blessed and fortunate enough to work here, but I did not dream of working here. I almost didn't apply because I was like, oh, it's cool. Like, I don't think I'll get this. But I prepared, my recruiter helped me prepare, and I'm here 2 years plus later. So you will have the preparation going in. And another quick tip I do want to, point out in terms of networking, it is perfectly fine to reach out to anyone on LinkedIn, and always let your friends and family know, like, hey, this is what I'm going after, and you never know who they may know as well.
Quick show of hands, who's on LinkedIn already? Okay. Excellent. All right, anyone else have some questions for our panel?
Would you be able to describe the technical interview process in more depth? Like, do you guys do system architecture and like lead code data structures and algorithms too?
So you want to take that one and stuff on?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess you might be more equipped to take that one because in my career we don't do those technical interviews necessarily. So Stella, if you have any light to share there.
For sure. So once again, like I said, we will go ahead and prepare you for the interviews. In terms of our interview process was just adjusted. I want to say it was probably about a year ago. I know Richard spoke about it in the past. It was like 8 interviews and a lot of, we call them mind trick questions. We don't do that anymore. You will, in terms of leveling, you will discuss that up front and you will know what leveling you're coming in at. And when you do that, of course, the higher the level, the more complex the questions will be. Our interviewers are prepped to go ahead and assist you. If you do get stuck or anything like that, we only go through I want to say the details, but we only go in depth in terms of the questions that you may have as you're going through the interview process. So I do want to point out again, you will have a good amount of preparation. Spend about 30 plus minutes going through what our interviews will look like. Just to give you a brief overview, you will have about 4 interviews. They're more than likely going to be in the same day. Takes about 45 minutes to an hour. You will once again have a small break in between those interviews. And then after those interviews, that's the technical interviews. After those interviews, then you will hear from your recruiter. In the beginning, I do want to back up. In the beginning, what you will be doing is more or less a phone interview. That will be speaking to a recruiter like myself. Just really just general conversation about your experience, what you want to do, what you are looking for. In the beginning, a lot will be placed on you to tell us, hey, where do you see yourself fitting in with Google? And then after that, that's when you go to the first phone interview. From the first phone interview, then you'll have an opportunity to maybe ask some questions. Not only ask some questions, you may get 1 or 2 questions or problems, I would say, to solve. But once again, we will go through that with you in our interview process.
And I'm going to, again, just pivot off of what Estelle said and just share another resource. Just Google Tech Dev Guide. And then you'll go to this site and it provides all these different tools and collections of information around like how to get an interview, how to nail an interview, how to grow your technical skills. It's a really, really good resource. And like you'll see down here, it has interview prep. Yeah, so really, really useful. You can see it even like kind of tracks your progress. So Tech Dev Guide, and this should be the first hit on Google.
And I do want to point out real quick, do not get freaked out about the GNL. Once again, we will prepare you for that. GNL stands for Googliness and Leadership. A lot of candidates come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, like I want to make sure I'm googly enough. Do not get freaked out about it. Like I said earlier, just be polite. As long as you're polite, you'll be fine, but we will prepare you for that as well.
And again, adding to Estelle, her mention of the opera singer, that stuff really stands out. So I strongly recommend like the thing that it really like makes you tick, that you get excited about, that has nothing to do with your job. That's the stuff that people are going to be really interested in, because it just says a lot about you and who you are and how you think and what you value.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for our panel?
And of course, I'll be staying behind here, so after the folks hang up, I can answer questions one-on-one or in a more smaller group setting if you'd like. So yeah.
Let's see. Could each of you talk about what you consider is one of your biggest accomplishments while working at Google?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I'll keep it pretty brief. I guess last year I worked on a 9-month deal with my sales folks and my team. Closed the biggest deal of my career. Did such a good job. Google sent me on Hawaii, all expenses paid trip, which is awesome. But the best part about that was that my cousin, who I hadn't seen since 2019, who was the best man at my wedding, and he has 2 kids. He lived in Hawaii, so I got to see him for the first time in about 4 years, and that was the real the best part I would say from. That indirectly came from all the hard work. So, yeah.
What a perk. I'll throw that to the panel. Richard, what do you consider your biggest accomplishment at Google?
Breakbeat code is the first one that comes to mind for sure. I'm like that is while it's only in my quote unquote 20% time project, I'm just it's something I'm very proud of. And when I really properly became proud of it is once I got like people like Calvin, Stefan, and Estelle that got involved, and see them like take it way further. And it was like this little seed. That's when I got even more excited. Like it was one thing when I was doing like by myself with 15 people, then I get this like a group of people that make it so much better. That I'm very proud of. And the day job stuff, I got to be part of acquiring a company. That's why I really enjoy working with startup founders, because that to me is like really exciting work, where you make a huge difference in terms of the company strategy, but in the process you actually change someone's life. Like you change it, like a CEO that gets an exit. So it's very exciting to be part of that journey as well, being part of like a strategic acquisition.
Very cool. Calvin? Yeah, so I think the biggest accomplishment that I've had at Google is, I've had years where I hit my sales numbers and that's been great, but I think the biggest accomplishment was bringing breakbeat code to the Virgin Islands. And the reason that being, right, is because it was during the pandemic and it was tough for everybody, especially people back in the Virgin Islands. And I saw an opportunity to bring a coding program, being that we were doing breakbeat code virtually, to St. Thomas, right? So this is outside. I mean, and this is the thing, like we don't get paid to do breakbeat code. This is just something that we do because we're passionate about it. So from doing that small project, so from doing that small event that we did in St. Thomas, we were able to. It's funny because like people I didn't know there were two, because the news from the event that we did in St. Thomas traveled throughout Google. And I just started finding out about people at Google that were from the Virgin Islands that knew about the event. And it just like caught fire to the point where, we started doing events in Ghana, Nigeria, Canada, Haiti, Jamaica, even in Trinidad where Stefan is from. So I think that's the biggest accomplishment that I've had, being able to, like, I know a lot of people like really, you want to get somewhere and make a lot of money, but is have an opportunity to get somewhere and be able to like give back to other people. So that was by far my biggest accomplishment.
Outstanding. Estelle?
I've had a few. It's just, over a little over 2 years, but I've had quite a few. I would say, for one, I was recently promoted. Two, I would say, just like Calvin said, being able to bring breakbeat code to the Virgin Islands. I didn't dream this at all, and I'm just so excited to be living it out. And three, which is the one I kind of hold near and dear to my heart, is being able to expose a new world to candidates who think it's not possible. Because I had that small thought of, is this even possible? Like, I'll just apply. But there are candidates who, they have the skill set, they just don't think it's possible. So I think that would be like my main accomplishment, would just be like being able to speak to those candidates, like the opera singer, right? Just being able to speak to those candidates, and then they have their offer and they get their offer and they're all excited. I've had mom cry on the phone with me. I've had dads hop on the phone and thank me a million times when I extended offers. Like, those are like the days that I cherish the most. I would say those are like my most accomplished days. Yeah, given offers.
I want to be a recruiter too. That sounds awesome.
All right, that's terrific. So any final questions for our panel before we let them go? Yes, sir.
Yeah, question for Richard about breakbeat code. And if people talk a little about how you brought it from a sort of the seed of the idea to this, process and that you use, and how you develop the curriculum and even discovered it as a useful teaching tool.
Yeah. So I'll answer the first question. How did I grow from a seed? For me, it was the less and less it became about me, the more it grew. Because initially I was thinking this is my thing and I did this. And honestly, that was in my head. I was like really proud of like creating the thing, but I was like teaching like 10 students. It was cool. It was super fun. It was really engaging. I was like really proud of like this thing I created. But what I realized at one point is like, well, the less and less it's about me, the more and more it's going to grow and become huge. the people, like I said, who inspired me, it really was first Calvin, because like Calvin got really excited about bringing this Virgin Islands. I'm like, cool, like you're going to do that, and that's going to be a thing. And then now it becomes bigger than me. I didn't realize at the time. I thought more and more about that. And then like Calvin and Estelle and Stefan, they're doing stuff, and I find out like kind of after the fact, like, oh wow, you taught like 50 students and 30 students, and you did all these things, and it's now like absolutely not about me. It's about like this bigger movement, and it's just so exciting to have been there at the beginning, because now it's like way bigger than what I've done. But answer the second part of your question, the curriculum. I'm really into hip hop. Was teaching myself Python. Why? Just I was curious. I like to teach myself stuff. I had no reason to study Python. And I listened to the track, and I was thinking, surely someone's taught coding with hip hop, and they hadn't really done. No one's really done that. And so then I just started like thinking of how I would teach this. The problem is I didn't have any students, and I'm starting to create this curriculum that didn't really have anyone to listen to me. And I just started talking to people about it a lot. Like, oh yeah, I'm developing this curriculum, and like other people are like, oh cool. But then there was one person like, well, actually, that would be perfect for this program we're doing in New York, where we're actually bringing kids into New York to teach them things. It's called Code Next. I'm like, perfect. So all of a sudden I had students, and then also had like someone who was excited about what I was doing and also had experience. They're like, you know what you're doing is cool. Drop the hip hop. It's not about hip hop. It's actually about music. I'm like, oh, cool. It's like, and by the way, this is how you need to think about teaching students. So they started giving me coaching and mentorship on how to do the thing better. And then I also just, when you create content, you just got to put it out there, and you got to accept that it's not going to be good. What I learned is that you got to be really comfortable with being bad at something, to be objectively terrible. Because I look back at some of the stuff I did, it was like so cringeworthy. I'm like, oh God, like, and I was just like, and like, fortunately, YouTube has the ability to delete videos. So they're just so terrible. And like, I'm sure the next version of this, I'll look back, I'm like, God, that was just like, why did you do it this way? So you got to be like pretty happy with being terrible at something. And once you feel comfortable in that space, there's nothing you can't do. Like lean into just sucking at a particular thing. That will give you opportunity to like, first to put it out there, people react to it, and then they'll tell you like, wow, that was hot garbage. Like, why don't you do it this way? So yeah, that was the trick. And then you start getting people involved. Like with Calvin, he's just like, you know what, actually that's cool, but like, what if we did it a totally different way? And then the more people you got involved, the better and better it got. And this thing keeps pivoting in different ways, which is super fun. So, suck at it, talk to people about it, even though you haven't really actually built the thing, and get other people involved and get them excited. And then that's when, you got something. And that's kind of true of creating anything.
Did I answer your question? Yeah. Excellent. All right. Any other questions? Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank our panel. Any final thought? How about any final thoughts from the three of you before we wrap up for the night?
Over to Estelle.
I would say, once again, be yourself. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't go on there every day, but I at least try to visit once a week to accept requests. So feel free to reach out to me, Calvin, Richard, as well as Stefan. If you all have any questions, we're more than happy to find some answers and answer them for you.
Calvin?
Yeah. So I know when people think about Google, they think about, and you think about tech, you automatically think software engineer. But hopefully you can walk away today knowing that there's a bunch of different ways you can get involved in tech. You could be a recruiter, program manager, you could be a customer engineer, you could be a sales rep, or you could be a product manager. We didn't even really get into that, but like our CEO, Sundar, he started out as a product manager. From his last role before he became CEO, he's a product manager. and Chrome. So that was the team that I was on. So bunch of different ways you could get involved in tech and then experiment different jobs. So thanks for having me today. And yeah, if y'all need anything, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
My parting thought is habits. Habits. Like you listen to like Estelle, Stefan, Calvin, they all describe really good habits. Like I said, I'm gonna commit to meditating in the morning. Read the book Atomic Habits. This guy name is James Clear. Atomic Habits. By far the best book I've ever read about life. And then sign up for his newsletter. James Clear, like clear window. And it will, everything that you do is a function of your habits. It's not about the home runs. It's about the singles and doubles and the things that you do every day. It's about, practicing. It's about Kobe spending 8 hours before a game, shooting the same shot again and again and again. Like it's those habits that'll make the difference in your life. It'll actually just make you a happier person.
Stefan.
Yeah. I guess my last piece of parting words would just be, we talk a lot about, tech careers and things like that, but from all of the other attendees, we kind of emphasize like taking care of yourself, right? Whether that's walking your dog or meditating or gym. Don't forget to take care of yourself. That's the most important thing, right? Why do all this hustling if you're just broken at the end of the day? You can't go 100% every single day. You will burn out, right? Just gotta enjoy it. So just remember to keep on taking care of yourself. I need to do a better job of that personally, but take it from me. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's give our panel a big
Thanks, everyone.
round.
Good idea.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care. Hope to see you down the road.
Okay, good stuff. Have a good one. Bye-bye.